Morning found me nervously apologizing to her, only to repeat the act again and again. Most evenings, we cuddled on the couch, our heads close like Siamese twins, my aunt's description. Our relationship grew deeper, but guilt lingered. For reasons I couldn't fully explain, I kept worrying about how Solomon would react to this new addition to our family. Aunt Alice often spoke about the benefits for children growing up with both a mother and father. I hoped Solomon would eventually see this change as positive. So, one Saturday, I took Senna to a PTA meeting at his school as a way of introducing her. I was disappointed. He didn't come to say goodbye after the meeting. I was so bemused that I barely remembered the drive home. Why wasn't Solomon enthusiastic about Senna? Was it the way I introduced her? Did I sound too cheerful? What did I miss? Does he know you? I asked Senna.
I don't teach junior high, but I believe he knows who I am.
She replied. I had expected him to welcome her as he had with some other female friends of ours. But, thinking about it, those had been his mother's friends. Then he came home for the holidays, and Pa Queasy followed him around, excitedly sharing stories about Miss Senna. Solomon, however, brushed him off coldly. 2 days into the vacation, I noticed his late mother's photograph was missing from its place on the wall unit. I found it under his pillow. I replaced it, but he took it again. This time, I saw an inscription on the back, I love you, Mummy. I hurried to Aunt Alice. He doesn't like Senna, does he? I asked, anxious.
It's not about likes or dislikes.
She replied.
It's more about replacing a feeling.
How? I nearly yelled.
Someone's come to take the place of his mother, and he feels replaced in your affections. Senna threatens the close-knit family link you've had all these years.
But Pa Queasy has accepted her. Is he different?
PK was little when they lost their mother, but Solomon was old enough to remember her clearly and carry those memories.
It's been 8 years. I argued.
Haven't you been skeptical yourself about letting another woman step into Eva's shoes?
He's a kid, I protested.
He has emotions. Be gentle with him and don't expect too much too soon, or we may face more challenges than we've bargained for.
Like what?
Fear, anxiety, and anger, which could turn violent.
I asked every question I could think of, and Aunt Alice answered each patiently. I was disappointed throughout the vacation, as Solomon's attitude remained unchanged. He returned to school still withdrawn. During the first term of his second year, his teacher summoned me to discuss his declining academic performance.
Mr. Wanka, your son seems distracted in class, and his grades are suffering.
I was told. My son, once active in extracurricular activities, was now frequently found brooding. He was slipping far below average. Sitting beside him, I resisted the urge to scold him harshly, but desperation gnawed at me. Then I came up with a plan. 4 years, I had avoided taking my annual leave, but now I was eager to spend 3 months away from work, planning a getaway with the boys and Senna. I imagined a week at a beach resort, relaxing and bonding as a family. I coordinated the trip with the school's long vacation. I hoped that spending time away together might help Solomon warm up to Senna. But as we shopped or played on the beach, he remained withdrawn, ears plugged with his MP3 player. Back home, he holed up in his room, often taking his frustrations out on his brother. Despite everything, I went ahead with the initial marriage ceremony. The night before the event, Solomon ran away. Aunt Alice called to tell me he was with her, and she pleaded with me to let him be. I did, hoping he'd return soon. But after a week, with no sign of him coming home, my frustration mounted. I was not having an affair, Eva was gone, and I'd finally found love and a mother for my children in Senna. She wasn't forced on me, I chose her. How could I explain all of this to a teenager? After 2 weeks of silence from Solomon, my anger reached a breaking point. His behavior was hurting me deeply, affecting my relationship with my new wife. I grew irritable, withholding communication. Finally, I went to Aunt Alice's house, but she wasn't home. I found Solomon watching TV, but even as I calmly tried to coax him to return, he refused. My patience snapped, and I grabbed his arm. When he tried to break free, my frustration overwhelmed me, and I struck him repeatedly. The housekeeper intervened, pulling him aside as I stormed out of the house. I expected my aunt to come storming through my gates, and she did. She had come straight from work, having seen that the boy was running a fever. She pulled me aside, out of earshot, and gave me a tongue lashing like I'd never had before. She called me, among other things, a senseless only child, whose mother had coddled him so much that he thought the world was just as cozy as his mother's embrace. When she calmed down, she gave me a lecture much like one she'd give in her consulting room as a psychiatrist. She told me that Solomon was past the age where he would blindly accept anything without questioning its intent. He wouldn't always yield to my whims, and I needed to realize that parenting was indeed an arduous task, one that, if not handled properly, could harm a child instead of helping them. She warned that using brute force on a child could lead to behavioral issues that might cause me many sleepless nights. She made me understand that adults often overlook sudden changes in a child's behavior, refusing to see the turmoil they experience at home or school, while labeling every reaction as a side effect of adolescence. We expect them to behave normally when we dump household responsibilities on them, change their schools without ensuring they're coping, ignore sibling rivalry, or question their resentment toward a new parental figure. We fail to see that they have feelings to express, which we often mistake for disobedience and rebellion. As the days went by, I regretted my actions. I wished my son were home so I could apologize for misunderstanding him. My only consolation was that he hadn't run away to an unknown place. After 3 weeks, Aunt Alice called me to say that Solomon was ready to come home. She had spoken to him every day until he finally softened. He told her that we didn't need anyone to cook for us. "We're doing our own cooking," he said. "And besides, we're older now, and capable of handling the chores." Aunt Alice reminded him.
But you've gone away, and soon Pa Kwesi will leave too. He's also growing up and won't be able to manage everything alone when you're both gone.
"He won't have to cook much when he's alone," Solomon replied.
You're being selfish, Solomon.
"I'm not. I just don't want anyone else in our home."
That's still selfish. Your father deserves someone in his life.
"We'll come home during the holidays to take care of him."
Solomon, you don't understand. By our tradition, your father should remarry, and besides, he's still young.
After that, he shrugged and fell silent. I was joyful but cautious, making an effort not to be overbearing. I was immensely grateful to have my family under one roof again. One morning, Senna asked me,
When will you let me in on what's going on?
"I don't want you involved," I replied.
That's not fair.
She said.
It concerns me too. If your son is struggling to relate to me, I should be part of the solution.
I tried to keep her out of the matter, fearing she'd react badly, but I was wrong. Despite our age difference, I had come to find her remarkably resilient in difficult situations. God had truly blessed me with a wonderful woman. She had been waiting for me to allow her to speak to her stepson. On Pa Kwesi's 13th birthday, we spent the whole day at a beach resort, just as we had on Solomon's. It was our way of marking their entry into adolescence. That day, Senna attempted to open a dialogue with Solomon, but it didn't go as planned. She tried again that evening and managed to get a small response. One Saturday, I couldn't find her in her usual spots around the house. I wandered down the hall, listening carefully, and heard voices coming from the boys' room. It was Senna's voice, speaking softly and cautiously, as she asked questions and received hesitant answers. She told the boys that she hadn't come to replace their late mother in their hearts, nor to erase her memory. She hadn't come to take over their father's affection. In fact, he would now have more time for them, as he no longer had to manage all the household chores by himself. I heard Pa Kwesi chuckle.
Your mother didn't divorce your father.
She said.
She passed away, and I'm deeply sorry that you had to go through that.
She made it clear she was not a threat to their happiness, unless they chose to make their father unhappy.
Do you want to make your father unhappy?
She asked. Silence filled the room. I guessed Pa Kwesi was nodding, while Solomon likely gave his usual shrug. Again, Pa Kwesi chuckled.
Your father has looked after you alone all these years. Now he wants something for himself. He's thrilled to have you two amazing boys, and is also happy to be married to me. I don't think you want him to be unhappy, do you? I know you love him enough to respect his wishes.
There was another pause.
Would you really break his heart now that he only wants you to be happy for him? I hope you'll show him your gratitude for all he's done. Thank you for listening to me. Breakfast will be ready in an hour. And please bring out your dirty laundry.
I quietly slipped away, deeply moved. The good book says, every wise woman builds her home, and I now felt certain that Senna was the right person to carry on where Eva had left off. The first sign of change was when Solomon joined Senna on a trip to the market. After that, I often asked her about his behavior while I was away, anxiously wondering how their relationship was developing. Senna would laugh whenever I drilled her, my concern obvious. "Oh, he even helped me hang the clothes to dry," she would say with a smile. Another time, she mentioned they had watched a movie together, with him pointing out the funny scenes. Each day, as the situation improved, I breathed a little easier. Then one morning, a week before Solomon was to return to school for his final year, everything fell into place. I was ill and had been convalescing for a few days. On one of those days, Senna had to visit the antenatal clinic and left her cell phone in the kitchen. Solomon found it and ran after her, calling out, "Mom,